Yeah.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, dear viewers. Welcome back to episode number 3. Alhamdulillah, it's amazing to be, in this blessed month of Shahr Ramadan, and we've got an amazing topic with a phenomenal guest today. Something that's always, we always talk about, and it's that Shaytan is locked away. We're joined today with my host, Sister Doureine. Assalamu alaikum, sister. How are you?
Wa alaikum salam, Brother Neil. Thank you so much for this intro. Absolutely. Like you said, this is an amazing topic. We're joined by an expert, the amazing Nazmina Dhanji, who is a Quranic Arabic instructor, and she's been for many, many years. And we're so lucky that, she's agreed to come on. And so absolutely, Neil, Shaytan is a big topic during Ramadan, right? I mean, Ramadan is a time of blessings, of good deeds, but we still got our, monkey, like the Shaytan. So Nazmina, thank you for joining us. I guess my first question to you is, what is Shaytan? Who is Shaytan? And where is Shaytan during Ramadan?
So salam to both of you. Thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure to be here and just chat to you both.
Walaikum salam. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, it's a pleasure. So in answer to your question, what is Shaytan and where is Shaytan? So Shaytan, as we know, Allah talks about Shaytan, the figure of Shaytan, mentioned, in various different ways in the Quran. Gosh, so many times in the Quran. So he's referred to actually as Iblis and Shaytan in the Quran. Some people take the story of creation, which is where he's mentioned the most, as, a figurative, metaphorical thing. Some people say it was an actual event that happened. But in any case, the most important thing to remember is Shaytan is a human being's arch enemy that Allah has told us to treat as an enemy, to take very seriously, to seek Allah's protection from. And Allah's described him in a lot of detail in the Quran, right? Allah's quoted his speech in the Quran. Allah talks about his nature in the Quran. There's so much information that we're given, but I personally feel that we're oblivious of it. I feel that we've relegated the topic of Shaytan to the stuff of superstitions or myths and legends. It's like we talk about Shaytan, like, cover your food so Shaytan doesn't sit on it. Or, cut your nails because that's where Shaytan's droppings are, or Shaytan sits under your nails, or fold your musalla so Shaytan doesn't pray. Do you know what I mean? That kind of, we don't take it seriously enough, I feel, right? They say from that movie, The Usual Suspects, he said the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And I personally feel that when you read, the wealth of information we have about Shaytan in the Quran, it really seems as if we've ignored that completely. And he has actually pulled the wool over our eyes to behave as if he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to learn about this figure. And like you said, what he is, where he is. So, I can go into the etymology of his names even in Arabic. That's so fascinating, the name Shaytan and where it comes from. So in Arabic, everything comes from a root word, and the root words have meaning, right? And they're often very much linked to the nature of that thing. So Shaytan, when you look into Arabic, lexicons, what the lexicographers and linguists say is that it comes from 2 possible roots, or both. So the first one is shayata, right? So shayata means to burn up with rage, to burn up with fury, right? To be infuriated and kind of angry, which we know Shaytan was, right? When Adam was created, he burned up with rage. He was really frustrated, really annoyed at why Allah created such a being. And it also comes from the root shatana, and shatana means to be distant or alienated, right? Which we know Shaytan was, right? He was outcast from this sanctified realm, or he distanced himself actually. through what he did. And so they both apply to him. It's this being that himself is infuriated, angry, outraged, and distant from Allah. And Shaytan's main aim is to make us like him, right? So his main aim is to create distance between us and our creator, and to cause agitation within us. That same, this burning agitation inside where we don't find that peace. So that's what it seems to be based on the writings of scholars. So none of this, by the way, is opinion based. It's not from me. It's what scholars have said. I'm just an Arabic teacher, but I just quote scholars.
You are an Arab. You're not just an Arabic teacher, you're a Quranic Arabic teacher.
I am a Quranic Arabic teacher. You're right. That's a huge thing.
Definitely.
And Nazmina, by the way, for all the viewers, Nazmina's got a course called The Psychology of Shaytan, which I actually went through, and it opened up so many loops in my head and connected so many dots. So one of the things you said in your course, Nazmina, is that one of the translation, correct me if I'm wrong, by the way, I might got it wrong, but that one of the translation of Shaytan is to despair and to feel hopelessness. Yeah. Could you tell us more a little bit about that?
So the word Iblis, his other name, right? What Allah refers to, Iblis comes from ablasa, which means to despair, and to feel hopeless. And so it seems that when and there's an actual shift in when Allah refers to him as Iblis in the Quran and when he starts referring to him as Shaytan. And it's so interesting that Iblis was this figure that lived in that sanctified realm, and who tripped up Adam and Hawa through his many tricks. And then when he's banished, he's referred to as Shaytan, right? So when they're sent down to earth, everybody's sent down to earth, they're not allowed to be in that sanctified realm anymore. He's referred to as Shaytan. But when he's Iblis, the word Iblis, like I said, comes from this root that means to despair, to be hopeless. And it seems that when he refused to prostrate before Adam, he's asked with everybody else in that realm to prostrate before Adam, and he refuses, right? And he gives his justifications, he refuses. But Allah gives him a chance to explain himself. Allah doesn't just throw him out straight away and said, you disobeyed me, off you go, right? Yeah. Allah asked him, like, what was it? Why did you not prostrate before Adam when I asked you to? And Iblis gives his justifications. And when Allah tells him, okay, now get out, he doesn't ask for a lifeline. If he's somebody who's worshipped for so many centuries or so many years or whatever, right? He forgot or disregarded one of the main qualities of Allah in that he's Rahman and Rahim, and he didn't hold on to that. He didn't ask Allah for forgiveness. He straight away just asked for respite, right? He didn't feel any sense of remorse for what he had done or anything like that. He just asked Allah to give him time to lead us all astray. So in that sense, in not asking, he despaired that God would forgive him, right? Yeah. He didn't even utter the words, whereas Adam did, right? Adam straight away leaned into Allah's mercy, his forgiveness, and said, we've wronged ourselves, forgive us, right? When they ate from the tree. Where Shaytan was the opposite. He didn't even ask, so it's that he created distance between himself and his Lord. He created that sense of hopelessness that I'm doomed anyway, so I might as well just lead them all astray. I'm going to burn in hell anyway, right? Yeah. So it's that, whereas for us, we're told never to give up hope, ever, right? It's the worst sin to despair. Like, even if, you've committed the absolute worst transgressions, based on the Quran, you're doomed to hell, but we're still not allowed to despair. There's still hope, right? Even until your very last breath, we're not allowed to despair of God's mercy.
Alhamdulillah. Beautiful. We see in Dua Kamal, and there's that beautiful line that if you are even sent to the fire of hell, and if Allah gives you speech, that you will continuously cry out to him, that, how can I be separated from you? There's so many beautiful lines in Dua Kamal that relate to to being in hell. I just want to go back to your point about movies, because you said a beautiful point with Unusual Suspects. The devil, the Shaytan, is plastered all over our screens in the media. You've got Lucifer, which is a series. You've got The Devil's Advocate. I'm thinking of just films off the top of my head, which almost, I don't know what I'm trying to say here, like almost desensitizes us from Shaytan, desensitizes us from the devil being on our doorstep. Do you think that us as a society are being desensitized from the devil and almost playing him down, which is in that fact he's winning, and then we're losing our connection with God?
Absolutely. Absolutely. With anything, especially things like movies, I feel that whenever something has truth in it, they'll inflate it to the point of it almost becoming the stuff of movies, right? The stuff of myths and legends and the stuff of movies, anything, this, when people caught on to, for example, the New World Order or the Illuminati or things like that. It's like they made the Da Vinci Code, and they made, all these other movies that are to do with things like that, that then when you mention things like that, it's the stuff of movies, right? It's not to be taken seriously.
Yeah.
Same thing with this. It's a trick of the devil, really.
Yeah, it is.
To make things, to inflate things. And that's one of the words that Allah uses in the Quran for one of Shaytan's tricks, or one of his actions, is يُزَيِّنُ لَهُمْ أَعْمَالَهُم. He embellishes things, right? He's a master illusionist. Allah uses the term ghurur, which is delusion, fantasy, So it's lots of, smoke screens and mirrors and that kind of thing to make us, disbelieve our own eyes, to make us disregard him, to basically not take it seriously. It's so easy then to just cast him to the side and say, well, that's just Harry Potter, airy fairyland, right? That's the stuff of, magic and woo-woo. It's like, right?
Yeah, you put it in that category, don't you? You desensitize
you just put it in that
from
category. Whereas Allah, it's amazing how emphatic Allah is, right? So Allah mentions the word enemy, for example, some 50 times in the Quran, right? He talks about enemies, the disbelievers are your enemies, some of the people of the book, the hypocrites, your wives and children can be enemies to you. So Allah mentions various different categories of enemies in various situations, but nowhere does Allah say treat them as an enemy, apart from Shaytan. Shaytan, he says, treat him, take him as your sworn enemy, because it's something so important, but it's something that is very easy to just cast and put to the side.
Absolutely.
And it goes back to what you said at the beginning, where when you said that he wants you to think he doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And by going into the world of movies, it's like, that's not us. That's nothing to do with us. Yeah. We're good. Those are the, and it kind of makes it two separate entities. But at the end of the day, as you said in your course as well, I'm going to mention snippets from it, is that when you take the fear element away from Allah, from Shaytan, I mean, suddenly it's not that scary anymore, and you can deal with it. You can kind of combat it or fight it, or like you said, treat him as an enemy. And I feel like that element within us could be, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that's just my interpretation of it, is the man self that we call ego. Because I always say ego is edging God out. As soon as you edge God out, that's you telling God, I don't need you anymore. I've got this from now. And that's kind of Shaytan coming in the form of an ego within you to then lead you astray, lead you to a path that, you don't want to lead, by creating all this hopelessness and despair feelings of, there's no more hope. You might as well be bad. Since you've done this, no one's going to ever forgive you for that. You might as well do more of that, right? Those kind of chatter. So, Nazmina, what is waswas now that we're talking about chatter?
Okay, so waswas. So again, it's really interesting, and it's easy to disregard when people say whisperings of Shaytan, right? Shaytan whispers in their ears. And because we don't hear it, right? If you told anyone I hear whispers, they'd section you, right? It's not but whispers are not heard with our ears, right? Waswas of Shaytan I would say they're best translated as intrusive thoughts, right? They're thoughts that intrude into our psyche, into our mind, and unwanted thoughts. I remember the first time someone mentioned, I can't remember, I think it was a psychologist or a life coach, or probably someone on social media, who said, not every thought is yours, and not every thought is worth entertaining, and not every thought is real, right? Or is true, rather. That your thoughts aren't all true. Don't always believe what you think, right? Just because it's come from your mind, so to speak, doesn't mean it's actually your thoughts or that they are true. And I remember being blown away by that and thinking, wow, like that's a revelation. And to know that Shaytan can intrude in our thoughts, that there can be intrusive thoughts that come along that are not us, essentially us, is so important. So that's waswas, essentially. Waswas are those intrusive thoughts that are not part of our intrinsic self, and that seek to unhinge us, to mislead us. And it's not always misleading in the form of commit this sin, right? Shaitan's too clever for that. It's not that. There's various different angles he attacks us from, various different places he causes waswas in us, and often it's to do with our biggest weaknesses, right? Someone's weakness is their past. They can't let go of the past. They can't forgive the past. They can't forgive themselves. It'll be through that. It'll just be those repetitive, intrusive thoughts. If it's something to do with anxiety about the future and, inability to move themselves forward, constant self-doubt, imposter syndrome, you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be from that, right? If it's definitely worry about your children constantly, worry about finances, it's going to be through that, right? So it's, he attacks us from our Achilles heels, from the places where we're the weakest, but it's identifying what comes from us and what comes from Shaytan.
It's interesting because a lot of people attribute this, when you're on the masala, you're just about to pray and you're doing that 4 rakat salah and you're in the 3rd rakat, but you can't remember if you're on the 3rd or the 4th because you're thinking about what am I going to have for my iftar. The concentration goes. Or you're doing a good act, or you're on your way to do a good deed, you're in the masjid or something, and you have this recurring thought that comes in your mind. So that's not when you're in your weakness, but that's when you're trying to do good. That's when you're trying to speak to God. That potentially could be Shaytan at that point. Absolutely. Do you not think?
Absolutely. So that's also another one of the directions that Shaytan attacks us from, is from the good deeds, right? So either he'll prevent you from doing it in the first place, right? So you're doing wudu, you're about to sit on your musalla and the phone pings and there's a notification and you're just itching to see who it is, right? Or it's constantly there, the distractions, the lists in your mind as you're praying. Oh, must add that to the to-do list. Oh, must add that to the shopping list, and the forgetting what rak'ah we're in, that. So he attacks us in our good deeds in that way. But also when we've done the good deeds or when we're doing them, the self-admiration we feel, the pride, the arrogance, the halo that gets a little bit tight, all of those things too. So through our good deeds, absolutely, he's always lurking there.
And actually, what both of you are saying is actually really powerful, because actually when you go towards your prayer, in the adhan, he says rush towards your good deeds, because we as human beings are procrastinators. We'll be like, naturally we'll be like, well, I'll do it later. But I actually, now that I have this, new meaning for things and a new perspective of life, I'm looking at things obviously from a different lens. And everything changes. Like, you know, when you're looking at the meaning of the adhan, and rush towards it, like rush before you don't want to do it anymore, before the time goes, before Shaytan gets to you, rush to it. And when you do rush to it, so like one tick, yeah, we've rushed to it, so we're now on the musalla, so we won, Shaytan didn't win. Then when we're in the musalla, we've got all these thoughts coming. But it also shows that we're not taking enough time away from, if these thoughts are coming, this to-do list, and they're coming during namaz, is because namaz is the only time basically that we've taken off during the day. That's why you're getting all those thoughts at the time. And it also shows maybe that there is a need to take more time for those kind of to-do lists and other things, so that when you're going towards your namaz, it's all been dealt with. You know, you've taken that time off, you've taken that time away, and you're not doing it during your namaz. So that actually shows that there's a need for you to stop and reflect and do the things that you need to be doing before you get to namaz.
Yeah.
So actually, that's really, really interesting. And
I've heard scholars say that, you know, that the preliminaries of the prayer are there to put us in that mindful state, so we pray properly, right?
Yeah.
Rather than rushing headlong into it. It's, you know, the wudu grounds us. The, you know, putting perfume on, you know, brings that association with the place of prayer. You know, the having a quiet space, that even the sitting, you're supposed to sit beforehand and either listen to Quran or recite Quran or ground yourself, or let those thoughts kind of just flood in.
Yeah.
Deal with them and then start.
Exactly. And it's called priming, right? You prime yourself prior to namaz, so that when you do get to namaz, you're actually ready. Yeah. And actually there are apps like that where you know, I know I have this amazing app that 30 minutes, you can actually set the time 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 15 minutes before namaz, you've got Asma al-Husna starting. So you're already now, okay, your mind is like, okay, in 20 minutes, I've got namaz time coming. So you've got between now and 20 minutes to finally do your last bits and, you know, pieces that you need to finish, do your wudu, start walking towards the prayer, so that by the time you reach the prayer, that's it, you're ready. Like, you're ready for the best deed, basically, which actually, since I started that, I really have seen the benefit of less and less forgetting which rakat I'm on, and less and less to-do lists, because definitely I resonate with that a lot, you know.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Well, you'll have to share that with me.
I definitely will. It's amazing. The other thing you said was the intrusive thought, which we also call negative self-talk or inner critic, right? And my theory, and again, correct me from an Islamic perspective if I'm wrong, but you know, the inner dialogue that comes within you that's limiting your ability to believe in yourself, Shaytan wants you to think that they're yours. You know, what you said before, you are not your thoughts. You are not your thoughts. You know, we've become so good followers of Shaytan that we think they are our thoughts, but you are not your thoughts. But what Shaytan does is the words that have come from childhood, from maybe friends, teachers, relatives, he takes, by taking the form of your own thought, it sounds like you, it sounds like it's coming from you, and you start thinking you're bad, but it's not you. He just takes the form, and he there's a transference from someone else's, you know, he was in someone else. It's kind of like really weird when you think about it, but it's like he was in someone else, now he's in you, now he's transferring to someone else, and he goes back to that whole transference of energy, you know, the good and the bad. So it's quite amazing when you think about it, that you are so perfect. You talked about in your course, you talked about the ayat about balance, how Allah created Adam with that balance, and after he put his spirit in Prophet Adam, he became this enlightened being that Shaytan couldn't take. He couldn't take that, you know, how is it? And he had discounted that. He didn't think about that. So what do you think about this theory that, you know, actually you are, you know, you're not your thoughts, but it's coming from different elements of your life, your experiences, your past?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, so as far as we know, we've got Shaytan's influence and these intrusive thoughts, And like you said, we hear him in our own voice, right? It's not some external voice. It's not a man's voice in my head. It's my voice, right? But we also have the voice of the nafs, right? So the nafs is sometimes translated as, the id. Sometimes it's the ego, this inner self of ours that needs refinement, that needs training, that needs nurturing, right? Our own self. And their voices can sound very, very similar, right? And so it's understanding what's external, what's not intrinsically part of us, and what is part of us, and making sense of it all. But often the voice of the nafs, as scholars distinguish it, the voice of the nafs is very persistent and very insistent in wanting things, right? So wanting things that are not good for us. So say, for example, you decided that you want to buy something that you already have plenty of, but it's yet another shiny new gadget that you're tempted with, or a piece of clothing, or a pair of trainers, or whatever it is that you already have, that you don't need another one of. And you can, the ads are there, they pop up on your social media, and they're targeting you and everything, and you add it to your basket, and then you tell yourself you don't want it. You manage to coax and cajole yourself out of it many, many times, but your mind is still on there and you still want it. That's your nafs, right? Your nafs always wants things, and will always kind of coax you, cajole you, that kind of thing. So your nafs is often not necessarily going to cause you to commit a sin, but it's very insistent and persistent and keeps popping up, right? Sometimes our nafses do prompt us to commit sins. It's not that they don't. Where Shaytan's influence comes in other ways, like you were saying, this negative self-talk, right? This kind of putting us down, the inner critic, you can't do this, you're not good enough. Sometimes the other way as well. Sometimes it translates into making us feel superior and better than who we are, and overinflating our egos and making us feel, better than others, right? So it can work both ways. But yeah, that it's certainly there in the writings.
Definitely. When you're talking about nafs, obviously going through this period of Shah Ramadan, the fasting period, sticking away from worldly desires, from water, from food, from fasting the eyes, fasting the ears. This is a way of building up willpower, and the willpower from within. But it's also that battle against your nafs. It's that fight against your nafs. I think sometimes we underestimate that in the West, we wish we were in the East because everybody's fasting with us. But I think we've got the beauty of living in the West because we've got the opportunity to actually go out right now and have that drink, go to a shop, have that meal. Whatever we want to do, it's literally on our doorstep, and nobody would even blink an eye. But because we battle against that, because it increases our willpower, we're fighting against that nafs even harder. I think we get more reward for it. We get inner strength from that as well. What would you say in terms of how we can fight our nafs and how we can fight that temptation to help us rise up against this self-doubt, this self-negative talk?
There's so many different ways. I think that the most important thing is awareness, right? Is to be mindful and to be aware of, and to equip ourselves with the knowledge, right? What directions do these attacks come from? And actually sitting down and introspecting, okay, so in this particular sense, how does it affect me in my life? Like, where do I find instances of self-doubt? And, I'm no psychologist, or, you guys are the experts, but I would say that, if you've got, the good fortune of having somebody who can give you perspective, and someone who can give you an unbiased advice or help you with that would be really, really useful, because often we lie to ourselves. Yeah. We delude ourselves and we tell ourselves we're fine. We don't need the help. And, that's for people who have, you know, mental health issues. But it's not. Every single one of us is affected, you know, and all of us need a helping hand. And sometimes you need someone else's perspective to shine a light and show you where those pitfalls are, and where these, you know, where these whisperings and, you know, things are coming from. It's not until you voice it to somebody else that they can tell you that, you know, this is not you, or this is not healthy, or this is, you know, this is working against you. You're too hard on yourself, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes, and I know from experience that, you know, I've always been one of these people who's a perfectionist, right? And I'm so hard on myself in the past, not anymore. I've been so hard on myself. I won't be able to get projects off the ground because I'd be so hard on myself and hold myself to such high standards, you know. And it's not until recently that I literally, and I you know, I had a business coach who helped me set up my courses and things, and she had to drum it into me to say, done is better than perfect. Done is better than perfect. Done, you know, and I had to say that to myself to get myself out of that mindset of having every little detail perfect. And she was like, just get it out there. Done is better than perfect, you know? So you need somebody often, you know, to help you on the path, because I wore my perfectionism as a badge of honor. I thought I was doing a good thing by being a perfectionist because it had the word perfect in it, and little miss perfect to just, you know, you fancy yourself as a, but it's not until someone shines a light on it and says, look, you're shooting yourself in the foot. You're not progressing in life. You know, this is not good for you, that you realize, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like you need somebody to tell you what you don't even know that you don't know, if you know what I mean, right? Sometimes half these things you delude yourself into believing that you're good, and you don't know what you don't know, you know.
And is it Imam Ali's hadith that, you know, a mu'min is the mirror of another mu'min, you know? And it's kind of, we all need that mirror, because without mirror, you know, we don't know. Like you said, there is no awareness. And I guess the question we need to ask ourselves is, these negative self-talk, this inner critic, this intrusive thoughts, how are they serving us? How are they serving us? Are they serving us? You know, and if not, why do we keep on doing that? Why do we keep on repeating the same thought pattern, behavioral pattern, action pattern, right? And what you said is amazing, because definitely mindfulness is the very first thing, is to kind of identifying and, rephrasing, identifying, noticing these kind of thoughts when they're occurring, how they're occurring, what time of the day, who am I around when these things happen, right? What's triggering me? The second one would be like, how do you replace those thoughts? How do you change them into, or reframe them, or flip the script into something that works, that opens the loop in your mind? And a lot of us don't know even how to cope with feedback and criticism, and that's something we need to learn how to do. How do you cope with positive feedback, or even feedback and criticism? Because not everybody is going to give you that feedback or positive feedback. Some people it will come in a form of a criticism, and how do you take that and take what you need? It's like a fruit. You take the inside and you reject the outside. Take what is there and take and reject what you don't need.
Knowing how to read the data, right? With anything, it's like you'll have the statistics and the data, but how do you read it? It's so easy to be blind to the stats and just go with what you want to see, right? With anything, very easy to do that. You may have stats about your business and about anything. The stats are there, but your mind can skew with them, and see only what it wants to see. So, knowing how to do that, even when you think about, the Islamic advice that we have for dealing with Shaytan, one of the main ones is and this is actually what Allah's parting advice to Prophet Adam was, right? When he sends them down to earth and says, okay, you can't live here anymore. When they've eaten from the tree, and he says, everybody get down to earth. You're going to be enemies of each other. And he says a phrase for فإما يأتينكم مني هدى فمن تبع هدايا فلا خوف عليهم ولا هم يحزنون. And guidance is going to come to me you from me. And whoever follows the guidance, then they shall have no cause to worry, be anxious, or to grieve. So Allah's telling them, hold on to the guidance when it comes, right? Hold on to revelation when it comes. And we've got the Quran. And yet Allah tells us that when you recite the Quran, seek protection from Shaytan, the outcast, because he's going to lurk there. He's going to prevent you from accessing the guidance, right? So even when we're seeking Allah's protection from Shaytan, we're saying, A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim, before we access the Quran, he can delude us into seeing what we want to see from the Quran, right? There are plenty of people who pick and choose the guidance that they want, right? They disregard what's in the Quran and they'll pick the bits they like, right? Or they'll be even blind to what the Quran says because they'll be so focused on just reciting it and not understanding it that they don't even access the guidance that's in there, right? There's so many ways in which we pick and choose, or we're blind to what's in front of us. And, you know, Allah's taught us so many ways, seeking his protection, you know, getting down to the guidance, the mindfulness, the dhikr, the salah, so many ways that Allah's taught us in how to combat these and how to, you know, get rid of the negative self-talk.
We've become a very pick and mix society, haven't we? You know, we live that kind of life anyway. We've got variety on our doorstep. We've got variety everywhere, and things are very accessible to us. And I think sometimes we become quite lazy as a society. I could just click my phone and, you know, something will be ordered to my doorstep. I can go onto social media and my algorithms will feed me certain bits of information. There's something within, you know, when I went to school and we had to go to an encyclopedia to go and research, go to a library and find the books. Right now I can just click a few buttons and go onto a search engine and find that information.
Yeah, get ChatGPT to write it for you.
Asant, there you go. That's the next generation now. You've got all of that. But within that whole process, something's been lost and diluted. So I think, you know, this is where your point about the Quran. We read it verbatim. We read it without even knowing what we're reading. We'll go in deeper when we know how many layers. Each word has 7 layers. Each line has 7 layers. You know, alhamdulillah, you know the riwayat, the hadith better than I do, but we just need to invest more time in it and understand Allah's words, understand that there are answers to everything in the blessed book, inshallah.
Absolutely.
Definitely. And I was saying the other day, right, that there isn't one thing, anything in our life that if we want the answer of, we won't find it in the Quran, because actually everything is in the Quran. Like literally, it is our guidebook. It is where we need to go for any answers. You know, I don't know why we always look elsewhere when it's right in front of us, but I think that's actually a human thing, right? You know, even the kids, like, go and get it. Go and get this thing. They'll open the cupboard. They'll see everything, but they won't see that one thing that's right in front of you. And it's like, it's there. Everything is there. If only you look, if only you reflect. How many times Nazmina does Allah says in the Quran, if only you reflect, if only you reflect. I mean, he says it so many times. He's actually, Allah really wants us to be back to him. He really wants us to go back to him. And I was just sharing this point with my husband this morning, and I was like, it's again something that I came up with as I was researching and writing the points for this live. And I said, you know what, Adam was good in nature. He was good because not only he had the divine soul within him of Allah, but when Shaytan told him to go and, you know, slowly go and get that tree and the apple, he didn't see anything wrong with it, because he'd never, you said in your course, he'd never seen a lie before. You know, he'd never, you know, there was no reason to believe that he's lying. because he swore by Allah, so he swore by the one he loved. And that's actually us. When we look at somebody, when we're looking at another human being, we have that ability to look on the good side and see, well, I have no reasons to believe this person is wanting to wrong me, or wanting to hurt me, or even if, no matter what the intentions of the other person is, we have that from our grandfather, Prophet Adam, which we often forget. And when he actually went to earth, which is the lowest type of a garden, lowest type of place that there is, because he'd already tasted the amazing, limitless realm. He was wanting to go back and elevate back to Allah, which is also what we're supposed to be doing, So we're actually just living his dream and living his truth, and going back to that original event. In timeline therapy, it's something where you go back to the original event of when it started. And this is where it started for us. We're just perpetuating. We're just kind of, we're supposed to just learn so much from that one event, one incident, isn't it?
Absolutely.
We're actually really good in nature.
We are good in nature. And, and you find that yearning that we all have an insatiable appetite for something, right? And it's not filled by material things. We think there's a void, right? Whatever it is we're seeking, and you buy one thing and the novelty wears off. You buy another thing, the novelty wears off. You go on one holiday, you love it, you need another one, and the other one needs to be better, and that hotel. And there's always, it's a perpetual thing that we're not going to find that in this world, because, like you said, Adam tasted what the other realm was like. We may have tasted what that other realm was like based on where our souls were before. And that's why we say, Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. We're returning to Allah. You only return to a place that you've been to before, right? Otherwise, you'd say we're going to Allah, right? But we're returning because we've been there before. We've tasted that there is a place where there is perfection. We've tasted a place where there is completion, where there is peace, where there is bliss, right? This dunya is not for that, right?
Yeah.
We're just going around in circles. But to understand that our Lord is the ultimate perfection, his essence, his names, the names he blew into us, right? We know the names he taught Adam, that they unlock that potential, right? In him is all perfection, and we seek it elsewhere, and it's only in him that we're going to find ultimate generosity, ultimate kindness, ultimate forgiveness, ultimate peace. And we seek everywhere but him.
Ya Allah, forgive us. There's that quote that goes around, and you see it on these memes: from Allah, for Allah, to Allah. And that kind of sums it up, doesn't it? We've come from him, we're doing everything for him, and then we will return back to him, inshallah. As we come to, the 20 minutes or so to the end of this episode, I want to really dive into this quote, this piece of advice during Shahr Ramadan, and that is, Shaytan is locked away during Shahr Ramadan. But where is Shaytan? Where is he locked away? Can you answer that question in 20 minutes?
So the funny thing is, Allah doesn't talk about a shaitan in the Quran. He talks about shayateen. There are several shaitans, right? The shayateen al-ins wal jinn. And like I was saying, shaitan's aim is to make us like him. There are so many, right? He makes insan can become shaitan. People have devilish behaviors. So the influences are, even if the main shaitan was locked up, shaitan, what we have to understand, is an influencer, right? He's an influencer, and an influencer influences people to act in certain ways, behave in certain ways, etc. Even when they are not there, right? The influence remains, right? They don't have to be in front of you 24/7 for you to do their bidding, right? They've influenced you, then they've moved on and found a new product to influence people with. But the influence with us remains. So that's the thing, regardless of where he's locked up or who's locked up or etc. The important thing to remember is the influence is still with us. We do his bidding without him even being here. Even if he was locked up for the whole year, we would still continue doing his bidding and acting as he wants us to act, unless we understand where he has infected us, where the influences come in, right? So unless we understand that, it makes no difference really whether he's locked up or not, right? So that's what we have to remember, is that in the month of Ramadan, yes, it's a time to rejoice that the devils are locked up, but for each of them, that means something else, right? It means something else for each of us. You look around, right? In the month of Ramadan, I find personally, the month of Ramadan is a time when we're supposed to be fasting, not feasting, right? We're supposed to be, the hadith goes, Shaytan courses in the blood of man, so block his path through hunger and thirst. So we do that during the day, right? Then come iftar time, it's a free-for-all.
Explosion.
We arouse our desires for food and drink. We cook things that we only cook in Ramadan, delicacies that are reserved for Ramadan. And, we literally give free rein to Shaytan to course in our blood all over again, right? So when you think about these things that are present, like, is this how it was designed to be? Is it supposed to be that way, that, we feast at the end? Doesn't it defeat the purpose of fasting? A month where the focus is not supposed to be on food, the focus is actually very much on food. A month when our time is supposed to be busied with Allah, I actually find that everybody else wants my time. I'm saturated with content. I'm saturated with this lecture and this talk and that talk and this event and that event and, this food drive and that food. Like, there's so much that there's no time for my Lord, right? All in the name of good deeds. It's all in the name of good deeds. It's all in the name of helping. It's all Islamic. But I feel like I'm having to fit my Lord in when it's his banquet.
Yeah.
Right? I'm ignoring everybody but the host of the party. I'm talking to everyone else in the name of good deeds, but the host, right? And I think to myself, wait, is this a trick of Shaytan happening here? Right?
Yeah,
I love that.
And you think, even shows that are being put on, that are Islamic shows, right? And it was the same when I used to live in Iran. It's like the best serials, the best shows would be in the month of Ramadan, right? You'd be glued to your screens because it was such an amazing morals, amazing lessons to take away, such good protagonists, and you'd be glued to your TV because it was such a good Islamic program, a serial, right? Hello, there's God here. So in the name of Islamic events and Islamic programs and stuffing the month with so much, you wonder, like, is it how it's supposed to be? Like, God, who's told us your sleep is worship, your breath is worship, have a nap, right? Don't put yourself in situations where you may backbite people, or be low-key. It's a time to be low-key. And we're just like, the socials are out of the window.
Yeah, they are.
So you wonder, it just makes you wonder, like, is Shaytan actually having a blast?
A blast, yeah. And what you said about Shaytan being an influencer is brilliant, because this is all what you're saying, the content, the everything. But my theory is that, look, Shaytan is there during Ramadan. It's not that it's not there, it's there. But, the ads have probably been blocked, but he can still DM you, he's been kind of blocked in some way. Why and how is because Ramadan is a time of immersion, being immersed in whatever remembrance of Allah you can get to. So anything that reminds you of Allah, anything that takes you towards Allah, it's that immersion experience that makes it that Shaitan's voice is actually drowned out. It completely, it's because, there's statistics that show that for every negative event, every negative experience, you have to have at least 3 to 5 positive ones. So it's a 5-to-1 ratio. And we are getting that opportunity during Ramadan to have that 5-to-1 or maybe more even, where actually it's still there. It's there, but it's blocked. It's locked in that you've got so many opportunities of goodness, so many clouds of opportunities of goodness, in terms of reflection, in terms of reading Quran, in terms of all the ibadat that we have, the du'as, the Laylatul Qadr, the night of destiny, the pockets of opportunities are endless during Ramadan. So he is there, but it's like, don't take it for granted that just because Allah, just because the Shaytan is apparently locked away, that you're good. Like, you're good. I'm good because Shaytan's not here, and I can whatever I'm doing is actually all good. But it's not, because he's there. He's just kind of been punished on the side. He can't come towards that realm. There's like a circle of influence he can't go through, perhaps, but he can if you let him. If you open the door, he'll come there. So don't take it for granted. It will still work if you let him enter, right? So, and the fact that what you said about the food being it's so true. It's my God, it's so true. It's like you're not supposed to be thinking about these things because it takes you away from Allah. Anything in this month especially, but actually throughout the year, this is just an example. It's like Ramadan is made an example of in our life, that if you want to perfect yourself, these are the habits that you need to acquire. These are the time to perfect the habits, to create the habits, and then create that momentum to take you towards the rest of the year, right? So Shaytan is there. It's definitely there. It's not going anywhere. Yeah,
definitely. I like what you said there. I think you're in the party, but you're ignoring the host. That's beautiful to even think of it in that aspect, and I think that's what we are. There was a sheikh, I think, in Shaban, that got into a bit of heat for what he had suggested on his social media about during one of the big Amal nights, just actually stopping and speaking to God and just reflecting on God. And I think it was mistaken by a lot of people in the community. I just think that, somebody that practices and teaches meditation, Islamic meditation, I don't think that we do enough of that. I don't think we do enough of stopping and pausing and reflecting. If the hadith from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi says that 1 hour's worth of contemplation is worth 70 years of ibadah, how often do I sit down for an hour and just contemplate life, universe, creation, everything? So by stopping during this blessed month, I'm not thinking about what I'm going to have for iftar, or who I'm inviting over, or how many things I'm going to watch, and how much lectures aren't I good because I've watched 15 lectures today and I'm so great because I'm so knowledgeable. Actually, have I just had a conversation with my Lord? Have I just sat there and contemplated on nature? Have I gone out for a walk and looked at the sky and the birds and, attributed that to Surah Mulk because the birds are above the clouds? There's so much that we can do, simple things, but we overcomplicate it. It is quite frustrating, actually. And I think this Sheikh, who's a great guy, has been shot down for actually telling people just to slow down, stop, reflect, and pause for a bit.
Yeah, definitely. And one tip that a scholar had taught me, back when I was studying, was that Shaytan thrives in encouraging multiplicity, right? Our whole thing is tawheed, right? We are supposed to align every aspect of our being with tawheed, right? With oneness of being, oneness of thinking. But even in the way that we are, that in our actions, in our behaviors, there should be a movement towards reductionism, as close to one as possible, right? The more multiplicity there is, the more you're away from tawheed.
Wow.
And that's
amazing.
In even the micro things, even in the number of dishes we cook, right? Guests aside, that's different, right? But even for guests, there is such a thing as too much. There is excess. There is being too lavish. But, when you think about it, where throughout the rest of the year, we're fine having one meal, We're absolutely fine. We survive and it's perfect and we're satisfied. Why is it that we need 3 or 4 in Ramadan? Right?
Know.
Like, are we going towards multiplicity or are we going towards reductionism? You know, shouldn't that one meal be simplified to something even simpler? Because really, a fasting man, if you gave a fasting man bread and tea or bread and water, he would be so happy with that, right?
True.
That's how it should be. A fasting person is happy, so grateful for a little, and happy to donate the rest, right, to people who don't have. Whereas we're the opposite. Our food bills are through the roof in the month of Ramadan, because not from feeding others, mind, from feeding ourselves. Right?
Yeah.
And you spend cooking that. My God, that takes you away from.
You know, is it reductionism to let me reduce? You know, when you think about it, when you're a guest, right? As a guest, we're not supposed to be working. The guest doesn't do any work, right? Allah's invited us as his guests. He calls us guests to his banquet. He doesn't want us to work. Whereas we overburden ourselves and we busy ourselves with so much in a month where we're his guests, you know, and everything's flipped on its head. And you think to yourself, it's a month where I find myself immersed in multiplicity. There's just so much bombardment of stuff, of food, of events, and it's not helping me get down and to that reductionism and going closer and closer to Tawheed. I don't know. This is just, you know, they're just thoughts.
It's brilliant. Brilliant. I love that. I never thought of it this way, but it's so true that we're busying ourselves for whatever reasons, you know, to please others, people pleasing, or whatever it is that's, you know,
and a lot of the time it's in the name of God.
It is,
a lot of the time it's all well intentioned. Nobody does it out of, hey, let me busy myself, you know. It's well intentioned. Even down to our programs, like you were saying, the Sheikh, you know, the list of things that need to be recited, you know. Sometimes I wonder, what if we just took one passage from Dua Iftitah and, you know, and split Dua Iftitah into 30, and every night we just did that one passage, 1/30th of Dua Iftitah, and really pondered on it. And it's an amazing dua. It is so good. We just rattle it off.
Brilliant.
And I wonder, like, is that the objective? You know,
you're speaking my language now. You're speaking my language. Honestly, I would love for that to happen. I think sometimes it becomes a bit like a tick box. Yeah, and you're not getting anything out of it. So we just need to sit back a little bit. So we're into the last few minutes of today's episode. Just wanted to thank you. Really, honestly, it's been so enlightening. Thank you for speaking my language. Honestly, any leaving thoughts, anything you want to leave the viewers to kind of just ponder on and think about on this particular topic, my dear sister?
I would say one of the main things we didn't really touch on that much was the fact that Shaytan is a know-it-all, and he makes us be know-it-alls, right? He makes us believe and delude us into thinking we're good. We know it all, right? And, you know, when you look at creation story, and when Allah taught Adam the names, and then he turned to the angels and said, can you tell me the names if you know them? And they said, La ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana. We don't have knowledge except what you have taught us. They held their hands up and, you know, in humbleness, where Shaytan wasn't. He was a know-it-all. And it's so important to maintain humility with these things, and to maintain humbleness, and admit that we don't know it all, that there are people who have expertise in certain fields, there are people who've done the work, and there are people out there who can help us. The Quran is full of guidance. We haven't even scratched the surface, you know. Literally, there is so much to learn, there is so much to gain. And, you know, I think if we just humbled ourselves a little bit and just admitted that there's so much to learn, so much to improve on, I think that alone is leaps and bounds into spiritual development.
It opens your mind.
It opens you up, you know.
It opens you up to receiving.
To receiving, just to be humble and saying, you know what?
Neil, before we end, I just wanted to mention something that one of a good friend of mine whose daughter is in the same class as my daughter, she actually asked me to actually mention this as well, is that as women, you know, we, especially as mothers, we go through depression, we go through postnatal depression and all sorts of things, and it takes you down into a spiral of nothingness and, you know, a rabbit hole of depression and negativity and thoughts. And the fact that, you know, being aware of it, but also knowing that it's okay. It's okay to don't feel bad that, you know, you're going through that means you're bad, and put a label on you that everybody else. And if you do need help when these things happen, if you do feel like you can't do this alone, you can't do this anymore alone, reach out, ask for help. And even Nazmina, you can back me up on this. And Allah says in the Quran, ask for help. All He wants is for us to ask for help. And this friend of mine, she had gone through depression and postnatal depression, and she's come out the other side as well. And she asked me to mention this actually specifically, that, you know, tell the viewers, tell the women and the moms especially out there, that if you are going through that, you know, just don't worry, because there is a light at the end of the tunnel, and Shaytan will not win. Shaytan will not win. You know, the truth will win. You will win. So I just wanted to mention that bit as well.
Thank you so much. Sister Nazmina, where can the viewers find you? Where can they get content, find you on socials, etc.?
Okay, so if they just look up Arabiq Online, you can see it on the wall behind me. It's Arabic with a Q. Okay, so Q stands for Quranic. Arabiq.online on Instagram, YouTube channel, which at the moment is a little bit dead, but still, inshallah, we'll revive it. And you can find all the courses on Arabiq.online. So www.arabiq.online. That's got our latest course, Psychology of Shaytan. It's on special offer at the moment. So do sign up. It's a very short course. The whole thing takes you about 3 hours to go through. And you'll gain lots out of it. It's self-paced. There's no Zoom calls. It's not taught live. It's through short video lessons. And yeah, I invite you all to delve deeper. We haven't, you know, we've spoken a lot about it on this show, but there's still so much to uncover.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. We're just getting a snippet. I appreciate that. Thank you for your time. We'll put all the details into the description of this particular episode of where they can find you, the links, etc. on there. Thank you so much for your time. We really do appreciate it. Our next episode coming up in the next couple of days: fulfillment, contentment, and happiness. Who is joining us, Sister Doureine?
It's Farzana Karwali. She's she's an expert in the matter, well-being, wellness, and she's going to go through, you know, the process of fulfillment, grief, and how to deal with it. And it's going to be a very, very interesting episode, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us, and please do like, subscribe to the channel so you get all new content. Hit that notification button. And we will see you live again in the next couple of days. Have a blessed Ramadan, and please do remember us in your du'as. Thank you so much. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.